Hello? So it's really happening. Didn't it not end so well for them last time? Well, what's going to be different this time? They have a better plan. Well, I can't wait to see how it goes. Yeah, keep me informed. Thank you. What do you do if your ally in a war against a mighty foe is suddenly defeated, his armies routed, and his capital pillaged? Well, if you're the British Prime Minister, you begin looking for new allies. I'm Zachary Fielding, and this is Theater Commanders. This week marks the beginning of round one in this conflict, as Führer Dennis Smith of Germany has appointed his generals to their theaters. In the West, we see Jeff Scamardella appointed to 4th Army Command and Naval Operations. In the East, he appoints Dave Scamardella with plans to attack the Soviet Union as a declaration of war is being drawn up. On the night of the 8th, Jeff wastes no time in conducting operations in Sea Zones 106, 109, and 111. The plan here is to strike the British transport and destroyer fleets to cut the British off from being able to reinforce the French, while giving his U-boat fleets reign to convoy the British economy as needed. Jeff's strategy needs to be successful in all three key areas for Phase 2 to commence. 111 and 109 see victories with minimal losses, a U-boat in each one with a damaged Bismarck in 111. However, 106 sees absolute catastrophe as the British are able to destroy the 2 German U-boats in the region. So things are not looking so good at sea off the bat, with 4 total U-boats lost this round and a new one being commissioned. So they currently have 2 at sea right now. Dennis Smith, on the night of the 9th, declares war on the Soviet Union. Operations kick off in eastern Poland with Dave smashing through the Soviets by near total surprise, crushing the 2 divisions in the region. 6th Army also conducts probing attacks into Yugoslavia, with the plan being they will find the weak points and relay it to 4th Army Mechanized Command for when they come back from France. They will hit Yugoslavia on their way to support the Eastern Front. But before that happens, France needs to fall, as Jeff Scamardella and Dennis Smith personally lead the attacks on Paris. They see heavy resistance, but ultimately prevail victorious, with 4th Army losing 7 infantry divisions in this battle alone, a heavy price to pay for just one army. Now, looking to the Soviet Union, word reaches high command as head chairman Pete Petromala orders his generals to take immediate action. He wants to see the southern region under command of Erich Nikkel resist the German attacks no matter the cost. For this task, he is given the 41st Army, headquartered out of Kiev, the 3rd largest city in the Soviet Union. To the north, General Josh Fitch is given command of 62nd Army and wastes no time issuing orders, ordering all units in the region to fall back to Leningrad. At sea, he orders the Soviet U-boat north of Leningrad to make haste and sink the Bismarck before it can escape to safety of German waters. This operation is successful, and we see the Bismarck slip beneath the waves the night of the 10th. A huge blow to German morale and strategic naval command. Josh Fitch, however, is not in the region at the moment, as he is currently in the Far East with the 14th Army. He receives orders to begin marching the 14th westwards to hopefully link up with the 41st Army in the south. This, ironically, does play right into the benefit of the Soviets, as the Germans did receive commitments from the Japanese to attack the Soviets in the Far East. Now, with that said, Emperor Tyrone Smith of the Japanese Empire orders his generals to only commence this operation if enough Soviets are within striking range. Paul Hutchinson, commander of the Imperial Japanese Army, suggests they focus instead on China, as operations in the Soviet Union will just lead to wasted resources and chasing the Soviets across frozen lands. He wants to finish operations against the Chinese to help them prepare for what Admiral Tom Bonner sees as inevitable war against the Americans. Emperor Tyrone gives the green light for these operations to commence in China, with attacks commencing along the entire front. In key areas like Yunnan, the 11th Army is able to cut the Burmese road, effectively severing supplies to China. The Nationalist Chinese lose a 6-to-1 casualty ratio to the Japanese, something they can ill afford to be suffering at this moment. Orders come in for them to retreat to central China, as they need to regroup with the communists to even stand a chance after such losses. The 11th Army now stands uncontested in southern China. At sea, Emperor Tyrone Smith does give the green light for Admiral Tom Bonner's plan to station the combined fleet in the Caroline Islands. This is an aggressive stance, as the Caroline Islands sits in a very strategic spot, with the naval base allowing them to now reach as far east as Honolulu or as far south as Sydney, Australia. From here, they can also hit the French colony, French Indochina, if they see it is necessary, as well as capture the Dutch Money Islands in Southeast Asia. Tom Bonner now takes the combined fleet and makes haste for the Caroline Islands, bringing with him the flagship, the battleship Congo, and heavy cruiser Chikuma, as well as the 3 fleet carriers Soryu, Shikaku, and Zurikaku, and a complement of destroyers and other escorts. He does, however, only have 1 transport with him, which isn't as threatening as he initially had hoped. However, the Emperor does order the remaining transports to remain behind to transfer supplies to Korea for the 11th Army's future operations. They will be sent to link up with him in future rounds. But for the time being, he is a lion without any teeth. Threatening, sure, but no force behind the punch. This move does freak out Allied Command, however, leading Australia to cancel plans to annex the Dutch Money Islands before any war is to kick off. They focus instead on wanting to fortify the home islands. Now, US President Danny Davis, recently elected to a 2nd term in office, is able to talk down the panic in Allied commands, pointing out this could very easily be repulsed if they are to go south for Australia. Now, precautions are taken, however, as President Danny Davis is able to pass a spending bill through Congress, allowing him to build up the United States military, though not at war at the moment, and appoints General Brandon Morgan to the Pacific, ordering him to counter this aggressive move by the Japanese. He sends out the main fleet of the United States and stations them in Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, as well as sending out 2 destroyers for long-range reconnaissance, giving them ample time if an attack is to come. Now, in the Atlantic, Andrew Beveridge is appointed to Atlantic Command for the United States. He is ordered to work closely with the British forces in the event that they are dragged into this conflict. He will be working primarily with the United Kingdom General Shannon Brincat, commander of the 8th and 10th Armies respectively, and currently stationed in Malta. Shannon Brincat is the reason the UK still has any fighter power in the home islands. When the attacks came from the Germans, he ordered the squadrons to stand down, seeing it as a futile waste of machinery, as they could be better used for future operations against the Italians. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, Italy had just joined the war on the side of the Germans. Their navy, a prominent navy, will bolster the Axis naval forces, and Britain, having just suffered great losses at sea, hoped to preemptively strike the Italians before their fleet can regroup and pose a true threat in the Mediterranean. Shannon Brincat proposes a raid on Toronto, a strike in sea zones 96 and 97 that will cripple the Italians' ability to reinforce North Africa. Before we cover that, I want to look at the Pacific Command for the United Kingdom, where General Michael Tate is in charge of the 69th Army and has been running operations there quite poorly. He has been butting heads with the new Prime Minister, Dylan Benoit, who was elected and appointed to deal with this very conflict. The Prime Minister opts for an operation into the Middle East, hoping to establish an industrial base in the region, able to resupply India or the Soviets if things look dire. Now, he needs Michael's 69th to cooperate in this operation to get the job done. However, he sees operations in the Money Islands far more appealing, something that could boost the economy of the Far East Command. Prime Minister Benoit strongly advocates to not take this route, as this would put too many forces and transports at risk of the Japanese, and sees the Money Islands as more valuable going to the Australians, who, as I mentioned earlier, has plans to annex the islands. The hope here is to help offset the economy so the Australians can focus on naval assets to help bolster the naval forces of the Americans. Well, these men do not see eye to eye, with Michael Tate eventually giving in and saying he'll conduct a minor operation into the Middle East, striking the heart of Iraq. Well, these plans are planned poorly, and British forces, though overwhelming, performed very poorly in this region. All 3 divisions landed by the British are destroyed, with air power having to retreat and naval assets almost useless in the conflict. Michael Tate is dismissed by Prime Minister Benoit in disgrace, and 69th Army is given to General Jason Livings, coming into quite the chaotic mess as he looks to reorganize the 69th for better defensive position and has a better relationship with the Prime Minister himself. Now, looking back to the Mediterranean, Shannon Brincat has submitted his plans for the assets needed for the raid. The British are able to field 3 fighter squadrons, a tactical bomber squadron, a strategic bomber squadron, as well as HMS Ark Royal, the aircraft carrier from Alexandria, and the cruiser HMS Norfolk, as well as a destroyer escort. This is quite the potent force, with the odds heavily in the British favor. Now, the Axis struggled to get a hold of anyone with authorization to scramble fighters to the fleet, with eventually getting in contact with Italian High Command Shane Swilly. He is aboard the Italian battleship Vittorio Veneto, and when he receives word of authorization to scramble the fighters, he takes a moment to weigh the odds, before ultimately uttering the words, "If they come for Vittorio Veneto, they better not miss. Scramble the fighters." Soon, 3 squadrons of Axis fighters are heading for the port to intercept the British attack. This now leaves the Italians with a battleship, heavy cruiser, and 3 squadrons of fighters to fight the British. Ultimately, the Italians are defeated, with the Italian Navy now resting at the bottom of the ocean and their fighters all destroyed, however at great cost to the British forces. General Shane Swilly is killed in action, having scored 2 kills before his death, with Prime Minister Benoit himself also killed. He led the squadrons from the home islands to the Mediterranean. Shannon Brincat limps away with the remaining air power, having lost the Ark Royal and destroyer escorts. The only ship remaining is the HMS Norfolk, having survived the battle and remains behind to convoy the Italian economy. Just south of them in Sea Zone 96, we see another squadron lost in the battle, with HMS Egypt remaining behind. The British have now effectively cut the Italians off from being able to strike Egypt. However, they may have dealt the first blow to Italy, but Italy soon strikes back. Axis Command soon notifies Alex Decker, now ranking commander of the Italian armies, currently stationed in Milan, Italy, with the 8th Legion. He orders attacks into southern France and the remaining navy to strike the French navy off the southern coast of France, as well as striking all across Africa in Kenya, Anglo-Egyptian Sudan, capturing Alexandria as well as Tunisia. This now forces 8th Army back to the gates of Cairo, with the Italians now surrounding them on 2 fronts. We will see how this pans out, but for the time being, Italy does strike back and strike backs hard, losing only 1 infantry division in all of their counter strikes. Bulgaria soon declares war and commits their forces to the Italian cause. Now, looking back to the Pacific, the Anzac have now begun annexing the Dutch islands, with first landing in Java. and pulls all their forces to southern Australia in a defensive posture in case the Japanese do decide to go south. The French, still shocked from the loss of their capital and their country falling to pieces, sees only a few divisions take action, with the Syrian division moving south to link up with British air forces, and the French cruiser Jean Bart making their way for US waters. And that is the round, with the Germans now declaring war on the Soviets and starting vast operations on this front, while also summing up operations in the West, with France now surrendering to the Germans. The Japanese taking steps that very well may drag the Americans into a future conflict, with 2 players already killed in the Mediterranean. 17 players remain. Rest in peace, Shane Swilly and Dylan Benoit. See you guys next week.